Welcome to E360 TV, the live streaming and on-demand destination for influential voices and enlightened audiences. We offer trending, grassroots, and purpose-driven content across a diverse range of interests. E360 TV is more than just watching programs. We offer the ability to interact with live shows connecting audiences to real, authentic influencers and storytellers while streaming to millions of devices. Real experiences, raw conversations, one destination for it all. E360 TV.
I can kind of sing again because my voice is coming back. Yes, it is. I better slow my roll before I'm hoarse again. Louise Jefferson. Listen, I'm feeling good today. I'm feeling some kind of way. I'm telling you, God is good all the time. And all the time, let me hear it. You got it right. God is good. Listen, God can be whatever you want him, her, they to be. Source, spirit, universe. They don't care what you call them. Just call them. Get them on the line. Can I get an amen? Welcome to today's installment of Bathrobe Moments. That's the bell purpose. I ring it every day, Monday through Friday, right here in this sacred space known as Bathrobe Moments. Now, some people may think that's just a show gimmick, a prop. I mean, it does kind of look like one. It's huge, right? But it's not. This bell is, in fact, an opportunity. It's a reminder that just like that bell has a ring to it, guess what? You guessed it. So does the truth, our truth, your truth. Together, we fulfill one of the greatest promises available in my book, the one that guarantees us that when two or more of us, just two, one, two, me, you, come together in that conjoined spirit, if you will, of service to others, wonderful things happen. And I refer to it as spiritual magic. It's already begun. Can you feel it? If so, put it in the comments. I feel it. I feel it. Claim it today. Speak your world, speak your purpose, and speak your manifestation into existence. Won't you give it a try? I hope so. I'm Lauren Michaels Harris, and welcome to today's installment of Bathrobe Moments. This is my sidekick, Miss Lucy McGillicuddy Ricardo. Been here all 6 years. And I had to slow my roll. I got up at 3 o'clock this morning, starting my workout winter routine. And by 7, I'd finished almost a whole pot of coffee. Now, start something good. I need to slow that down too, right? I'm looking for a tea to replace coffee with. Any suggestions? Put it in the comments, right? Okay, so before I get our great guest in here today, it's all about mental health, but some things you may not have talked about, heard about, and everything else that goes with those two. Some new ideas, some different approaches today. And his name is Mark Hattas. He's been here before, but got a great summit coming up in just a couple weeks, I believe, and I don't want you guys to miss it. So what was the thing? Oh, I want to show you this. So here is November 1st, right here on the E360 network. Yours truly will have his own mini network, MINI, miniature network, my own network within this network, my own string of shows. And I am looking right now for just 2 more wonderful shows. Are you that person, or do you know that person who has a story? Maybe they're a podcaster or a blogger, someone who wants to take their message outside of what they're currently doing and send it around the globe through television. If so, I want to talk to them. Trajectory TV. What is it? It is where content meets direction. That's right. On Trajectory TV, all the content there is going to be designed to send your day, your afternoon, your morning, your night in the right direction. So if you or someone you know is interested, hit me up, PM me, DM me. You can email me at laurenmichaelsharris@gmail.com, and we'll get started talking about the possibility of you having your own television show. Pass that along, won't you please? Trajectory TV. Now, this is what Mark Hattas is here for today. It is the 2022 Integrated Mental Health Summit. It's October 7th through the 9th, and we're going to talk all about that today. Now, before I get Mark in here, I wanted to bring in, I have a couple clips today, but the first one is a little ditty I found entitled Using Integrative Care Models to Improve Mental Health Care. Now, this is a psychiatrist through one of the schools, but he says some things in here that I think are really important. And I want to get him out front before we get Mark in here to see how he feels about it and how some of the things you will hear inside this clip actually connect to what this summit is providing. Make sense? Okay, so let me get it pulled up. You know I'm not techie, pray for me. Okay, here we go. Let's take a look at this.
I'm Andrew Carlo.
Hi,
I'm
Andrew.
an assistant professor in the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences at Northwestern Medicine. I see patients in my adult psychiatry outpatient clinic and also as a consultant in the primary medical setting. And secondly, I do research in the department, and my research mostly focuses on integrated behavioral and physical health care in the primary medical setting. We have learned through evidence that depression, anxiety, and substance use disorders are very common, cause immense lost productivity and suffering for patients and their families. The good news is that we have a lot of evidence-based treatments to treat these common problems. The bad news, though, is that we often don't get the treatments to patients who need them and when they need them. First and foremost, there's a large stigma that's still associated with mental health. We've tried to mitigate this in recent years, but it's still a major problem. Secondly, there just aren't enough behavioral health specialty providers nationwide, particularly in rural and underserved areas. Third, patients often aren't able to follow through with recommendations made by primary medical providers. Integrated care aims to mitigate some of these challenges by providing mental health and physical health care under the same roof. This allows people to leverage ongoing relationships with their primary medical providers. It also reduces the stigma associated with going to see a specialty mental health provider. And at the same time, it allows mental and physical health problems to be treated by the same people at the same time, which we know from years of evidence is a better way to treat chronic disease. Most of my research on integrated care has focused on implementation and sustainability across diverse populations and settings. One recent study that I finished shows that we can actually implement integrated care models in rural areas throughout the Western and Northwestern United States in federally qualified healthcare centers and still end up with good outcomes for depression and anxiety among patients in those settings. That was a major finding because most of the studies before that had been done in randomized controlled settings. Other research that I've done recently has looked into the usefulness of novel billing codes for integrated care models. And what we found is actually that these billing codes do in fact help move integrated care models toward financial sustainability over the long term, which was always a barrier of integrated care models. I've also done some advocacy work recently on mental health parity. For decades, insurance companies have and continue to manage mental health conditions differently than they manage physical health conditions. I think it's really important that we have parity and that insurance companies manage both of those types of conditions equally. We've continued to pursue our understanding of the neurological and biological underpinnings of mental health, which has made a huge difference in the field and will make a bigger difference in the future. Additionally, we've developed and we've rolled out novel therapeutics, such as ketamine for depression. There's a lot of ongoing research on the possible use of psychedelic medications in mental health treatment, and that's something that we anticipate will be a bigger part of treatment in the future. On top of that, we've worked really hard to evaluate and roll out new telehealth and digital health technologies that are able to provide care to people on their own at any time. And very importantly, our field has done a better job of understanding, acknowledging, and studying racial and ethnic treatment disparities in mental health care delivery. And the research is helping us come up with new strategies to mitigate and eventually eliminate racial and ethnic treatment disparities in mental health care delivery.
Hallelujah!
It's a critical component of the future of behavioral health services.
Well, look who it is.
Hey there.
Hi, Mark.
How are you?
Good.
Great to be here with you.
Great to have you here. So, integrative. That was the word that jumped off the flyer when you initially sent it to me. I was like, well, I know Mark's had a lot of different mental health summits and workshops, things like that, but I had never seen this integrative part. Tell us about this summit, and then we'll get to you.
Yeah, so the summit is a virtual summit, so anybody can get there online. It's October 7th, 8th, and 9th from 12 p.m. Eastern to 6 p.m. Eastern every day. And it includes some of the foremost leaders in integrative mental health. And what we're really addressing are, the gut brain issues. We're addressing the nerve issues, how to relax the body. It's the whole person. It's not just when I went through a mental health crisis myself, I was in a very myopic set of protocols, and it was kind of med management and talk therapy, and it suppressed symptoms, but it didn't really have the effect of treating the whole part of me. So to have conversations about, the physical, the mental, the emotional, the spiritual, all those parts, that's one of the things that we bring are resources that really address all of that. So if you look at the days and the schedule and the speakers, we are covering all that, but it shows up for everyone in different ways. When we talk about mental and emotional health, it's not that person over there is dealing with an issue that, and the stats show that 1 in 5 are struggling, although it's much higher now that we're going through the pandemic. And even on the other side, the issues have been more and more pronounced. It's a 5 in 5 issue. All of us are on the scale of mental and emotional health and resiliency. So some of us might be thriving today, and tomorrow we might be gliding, kind of moving down the scale a little bit. And if you go all the way to the other end of the scale, people are sinking. And so the people who are sinking can come back, right? But someone who's thriving can come down. So what we want to do is equip people with the resources that no matter where they are on the scale, that they are able to move to the place that they want to be and not stay stuck.
Okay. So our word of the day, clearly, is integrative, because, and I showed a psychiatrist on purpose, because, they're the ones usually, here you go, take this, pop that. But because he did speak about ketamine and psychedelic treatments, my eyebrows raised on that one. I was like, really? Okay. Does it come with a Grateful Dead CD? Do they still make those CDs? Anyway, but so many new things. And integrative, what does that mean to you? Because he spoke of some integrative methods that were different than what the summit is all about, but I like them nonetheless. The thing about the finances and the insurance and making it better, so that it's looked at as importantly as medical treatment, and also about getting into areas of where people are underserved. Your areas of people of color, and lower economic, all that stuff. So I liked that. But tell us what integrative really means. Well, let's start with just you.
Yeah, so I'm not sure that I'm going to give the exact definition that a psychiatrist or psychologist will give, but to
Yeah.
me, it's treating the whole person. So it's not just treating, for example, the chemical changes that are happening, or in a person. It's not just the chemistry. We're treating the whole person. We're really supporting that person in the mechanisms that are available that are going to be their path.
Right.
Now, he mentioned a word called parity in there, which
Yep.
I loved.
Head down.
And so to have parity, meaning give the reimbursement through insurance, to these types of care, so that more people can get access to it, because a lot of the integrative care models are private pay, and that creates, like you said, to get to some of the underserved communities. Well, that's an issue.
Right.
Now, the one thing that does help is the remote service. For example, one of our speakers and our co-presenter, Dr. Albert Mensa from Mensa Medical, they do something called a nutrient power, and it's a nutrient. So what they do is blood tests and other blood, urine tests and things, lab work, to identify 7 or 8 different areas in the body that are indicative of contributing to a mental health challenge. So whether it's cryptopyrrole or copper and zinc toxicity, copper toxicity, or the copper zinc ratio, histamine levels, your thyroid, there's lots of different things that they take a look at. But one of the things that's really unique about them, and it's private pay, but through the pandemic, they learned to treat people remotely. And that was a big deal. So whether it's psychiatry, psychology, or Dr. Mentz is an MD, this is something that has brought more access. The other thing that a lot of integrative care providers, including Dr. Mensa, what they do is, if someone can't pay, they often have a support mechanism where they'll contribute a certain amount of resources to communities that can't afford their care, because it's known that insurance companies aren't reimbursing at the levels that are really needed for the level of care, because the care is great.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I want, me, I got to dig in to some things that, well, I want some answers personally about. So I want to ask you this question. Let's start here. We
Sure.
hear mental health and we hear the clever term mental wealth. Now, do you personally believe that those are two separate things, or are they one and the same? Then I'll tell you what I think.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. No one's ever asked me that question before.
Of course they haven't. You made me snort. Okay.
Thanks for the pause and the chuckle to give me a chance to think about this.
Yeah.
So, because I haven't given it much thought, let me just give you what I would suggest it means to me. Mental health would be a considerable practice, just like you have physical health. You have practices.
Oh,
So you don't go to the gym one time and come home and say, "Well, I'm done. Rest of my life I can go and do whatever I want."
exactly.
Right. I had a conversation with my daughter the other day, and she said, "Well, why would I need to do that?" And I said, and it was something along the lines of mental health. Hour every day, right? And she said, "Well, yeah." It's like, "Well, yeah, you do these things every day. You do these things because it helps you stay on top and process emotion and think through introspection on a short-term consistent basis. That way it doesn't build up and become monumental. Mental wealth, I would say, for me, there's a lot of the work that I do when I do private coaching or even group coaching opens up to generational dynamics. And generational dynamics are very prevalent with this. And the example I often use is, think of two computers, whatever, mom computer, dad computer, have child computer, right? Well, all the stuff from all the lineage gets passed down into us. Now, it doesn't mean it's always active, but a life event could trigger a past thing that's unresolved. So it could be 3 generations back coming active in our life. So my idea would be mental wealth is to create a legacy of health that then you pass down into your current family structure and down into your lineage.
Well, for somebody who's never been asked that question, that was quite a ditty of a response. So I'll just ring the bell on that one. I'm just going to keep it plain. In layman's terms, from where I sit, here's how I look at the two. And you were perfectly right, in my opinion, on the analogy you used as far as the gym. That's exactly how I look at it. When I am out of shape, say, I just started my ab thing. I'm going to have 8-pack by summer. Right? So when my mental health isn't what it should be, it's like I have a mental health pot belly. But then I do those things, that shape it up, that tighten it up, that strengthen the muscles within. And so mental wealth to me is that 8-pack. Mental wealth to me is that, for you women, or some of you men, that bikini body. I'm just saying, I love everybody. And so you see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And the reason that is I use them both interchangeably in my mindset is because mental wealth, as of right now, has no stigma attached to it. Wherein mental health, a lot of people don't even want to broach that subject because it's like, oh, shame. I ain't got time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that. So let's talk about the stigma piece. Because here's the thing, when he mentioned about lower economic areas, rural, all of that, I know in my culture, it is a shame thing. No one wants to admit that they go to a therapist. But when you're around your elite friends that, they live in the suburbs and they drive luxury cars and stuff, they'll sit around clinking Chardonnay or a nice cab and sit up there and say, oh, let me tell you what happened when I was at my therapist the other day. It's almost like a status symbol. Why do you think there's such a difference between communities and cultures just in the way we broach the topic of mental health? Why is there more shame where there's less money and more put your pinky out the more money you have? That's a real thing,
Yeah, I mean, you may or may not be exaggerating because I haven't experienced it quite the way you said with clinking of champagne. So I'm not in those circles, but I am aware that I remember Sandy Castro, who runs IC Stars, when I first started.
We love Sandy.
We love Sandy. When I first started Journey's Dream, and I was talking to her about this, and she said, hey, this is a real issue in the Black community, that they don't want to talk about this. And it's not that all Black people don't want to talk about it. That's not true. And brown. But it's that there's if someone is carrying in an environment where there's that pressure, Black or white, brown or white, whatever, where's that pressure, of needing to be a certain way, like we have to show up in a certain way. I mean, I remember just as a kid, we'd go to church and we had to present a certain way. Otherwise, mom would feel embarrassment, right?
Exactly what I just wrote down. Organized religion.
Yeah. And there's societal, norms, like we're supposed to be this way. But the issue with that is that's not how people always are. You shouldn't, like, we've been told you shouldn't be sad. A lot of us, or you have nothing to be angry about, or there's nothing
Right.
to be afraid of.
Right.
And well, that's all BS, because if the young person is actually experiencing that and you tell them that their feelings are invalid, it's like, well, you shouldn't be doing that. It's like, oh, something's now wrong with me. And so that's where we instigate shame. Now, we could say, well, hey, mom and dad, stop saying that. But they were told by their parents and their parents and their parents. It's kind of what I was talking about with the generational stuff before. It's like, if we can clean that up and say, you know what, when, little, Jimmy or Shawanda or whoever, shows up and says that they're experiencing something, if we could say, well, hey, tell me more about that. Like, is there, what do you need? Or come and, would you like a hug or whatever it is? There's something that kind of opens up to say, hey, this is normal. It's normal to have feelings. It's normal to be confused. It's normal to have these things. And so we really need, as a society, to create guidance. And we can create guidance by offering resources and tools. And it's one of the reasons we do the summit. I mean, anyone who shows up at this is going to walk out with a toolbox of resources that they didn't have before they walked in. And these are exceptional people, like Dr. Pleener. Andrew Pleener is a psychiatrist who's going to be talking about the STAR exercises and the scale and some things that are from some of the top practitioners around to help reduce pressure and tension in the body, which then helps free up the mind. I mean, it's really interesting, some of the practices. So I don't know the full analysis of why, but I am curious if you have any insights as well about what's going on in that community that is creating that. If you agree with me, do you have different insights?
Well, I agree with a lot of it, but I can tell you in my own families, which of course there are multiples, but my families of color, a lot of it has to do with, you bring that up, Granny, I'm going to go see somebody about my ADHD. What do you mean you're going to go see somebody? Boy, you don't need nobody but Jesus. That's their answer. It really is. You better just pray it away, boy. The old school people in, at least like I said, my culture, my family rather, I'm not speaking for all black and brown people, but my families, that's a go-to. That's a go-to. All you need to do, that's just the devil. This, that, and the other. And that holds a lot of people back. So I want to ask you this integrative piece, because I heard some shadings, some hints, if you will, that kind of take me to where I think you guys are inside this summit. And what I mean by that is you have actual psychiatrists and people with PhDs and this, that, and the other, but they're more, it's like a paint strip. The colors bleed into each other, or a graduated color scheme, if you will. What I mean by that is there's the traditional mindset, but now they're throwing out some other options. That stuff that a lot of people call woo-woo, which isn't. So talk about that. The combining of, braiding, if you will, old school theory with spiritual outlooks.
Yeah, and integrative does not mean spiritual, by the way, but
no, but does it integrative mean the combining of multiple things?
Yeah. So if someone, and I think it's still the same way, every psychiatrist I've talked to has confirmed this, that the schooling is essentially med management training. So when a psychiatrist goes to school, they learn very little about the brain. They learn about what medicines to prescribe based on someone's conditions. Now, I'm oversimplifying.
Doctors, sorry, but just like regular doctors, general practitioners don't have to do, if any, not much, courses on nutrition.
Right. Now, and it may be, and someone could comment and say, "Oh, it's not that way anymore." It's like, well, predominantly, as far as I understand it is, But there's more schooling for integrative care. But a lot of the early pioneers in integrative medicine, they were kind of, think of a jungle that's overgrown, and they're cutting down the path, they're paving the way. And that's why I think there wasn't a lot of reimbursement, because the insurance companies didn't really have consistency, that everyone was doing the same type of care. So what do they reimburse for could be part of the dynamic.
Right.
But what led a lot of these integrative practitioners that you'll see, and we have a number of them, coming. I think there's 25, 30 speakers coming. There's keynotes, there's breakout sessions, and a number of them had a reason, right? They had a reason to explore something different. Maybe they had a child going through something, and they're like, well, okay, the traditional care is not working. What else can work? And suddenly their small view of healthcare for the mind and body started to expand, because they realized, oh, it wasn't, the drug didn't work. I'm not aware of mental health, medicines actually ever healing anybody. That's not their intent. They're masking or they're controlling the symptoms.
Sure.
Which is fine short term, but long term, I mean, that's a really tough life. And so these integrative practitioners look beyond the medicine. They prescribe medicine as well, by the way, but it's not their only tool. So they incorporate quite a few. And just looking at some of the speakers that we have, and we're going to be talking about the gut brain relationship, with Dr. Deb Simkin, for example.
I hear a lot of people talking about that.
Yeah, you're going to want to know about that.
The gut is a brain.
Yeah, right. It's kind of the control center of our system, right? And so if the gut's unhealthy, and I had this issue, I went through my own mental health crisis in 2011 to 2014. I was told the same thing everybody else is, that you can't get well and plan on being on these drugs the rest of your life.
Yep.
And that it didn't work out, thankfully, that way for me. By 2015, I was off all medication and have been since. But a big part of that is I found a psychiatrist who, guess what, in his early 20s was diagnosed as bipolar. And he said, and he was told that there was no cure. So he went and got a degree. He said, well, I want to know what they're teaching. So he went and got a psychiatry degree. And he was the one that first shared what I shared earlier about what they teach in school. And most of his real education happened after school. So he learned what they taught. And then he's like, okay, well, that doesn't heal anybody. So let's find what does. And so he has uncovered, just as a lot of these doctors have, immeasurable value. For example, there's a strong correlation of Lyme's disease with mental health. There's a strong correlation that some doctors have found that anyone who's gone through schizophrenia, in their practice, they found that there was a drug like marijuana or something that could have opened something. It's inconclusive, but they just found it curious. Like, why are all the schizophrenic patients having?
There you go. Blame it on the weed.
But not all people who do weed end up schizophrenic, right? So it's like, well, what is that? So I'm not making any claims there.
I've smoked weed before, and I've eaten a gummy or two, and I'm far from schizophrenic. Shut up, I'm talking. Oh, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Look, listen. You know why I do that kind of stuff? I'm not making fun of anybody, because I actually have a coaching client that's bipolar, schizophrenic, and because I believe we should remove the stigma, in any way possible. I want to ask you about this, because you experienced it, and here you sit on the other side. Me too. The very first time I went to see a psychiatrist, it wasn't even 10 minutes, Mark, and he had his pad, I promise you. And he was writing, I knew it was a prescription pad because I saw him pick it up. And I was nosy anyway to see if he was going to write stuff about absolutely crazy, because, they're always writing. So I'll kind of peek at.
How could you read that?
Huh?
How could you read that with a doctor's handwriting?
Oh, he hadn't gotten there yet. But I was anticipating it, right? But he did pick up. So I was like on high alert. What's he writing? And it was a prescription. So I go, well, what are you doing? I thought he was like in another appointment already. He goes, oh, well, this is a prescription for lithium. I hadn't even told him my whole story about why I was depressed. I said, well, how long will I have to take it? He goes, most likely for the rest of your life. He's probably still looking for me because I didn't even say I got to use the bathroom. And out the door.
Like, boom, out.
Ran. Of course, I self-medicated to a drug addiction for a number of years after that, but I got through that. I wonder if I had gone that way, would I be doing what they call like the Thorazine shuffle, slobbering on myself by now? So what I want to ask you is, I know for a fact that within what they call inside that stigma place, I never would have even imagined that my ADHD is in fact, which I know to be true, one of my greatest superpowers.
Yeah.
It is.
And there's a lot of entrepreneurs and creators that are, they fall under that window of ADHD. In fact, there's a doctor here in Naperville, Dr. Kowal, who does neurofeedback. And so he gets a lot of the ADHD kids that he questions, and he's found that they actually don't have ADHD.
See?
But they're diagnosed as ADHD because they show up with symptoms. But when he puts the brain cap on and measures what's going on in the system, he's like, it's not ADHD and it's very correctable. And so he goes through a correction, mechanism. See? So it's there's brilliance. Some of the most brilliant people on the planet have gone through or have struggled with a mental health challenge because their brain is, trying to navigate something that it doesn't necessarily have the tools to navigate. So we want to give people tools, give people resources, correct the gut, get the nutrients to the brain, provide the mechanisms like the practices, just like you go to the gym and you have practices. There are practices to deal with grief and to deal with pain and to deal with rejection and to deal with these things so that it doesn't build up and then repeat in someone's life and get so distant from the core of the purity of who we are, the core of life, that it shows up as crazy.
Well, one of the things I like about that last stretch of the block we just came around is the entrepreneurial aspect, because creatives think differently. We're wired differently. And when it comes to tying and connecting those dots, tying it all together, it's a totally different experience. I found a little piece that I want to share with everybody about how to prioritize your mental health as an entrepreneur. A lot of people don't talk about that. You did. And I want you to take a look at this clip. And I'm hoping that this will ignite something with a lot of you entrepreneurs out there. I know it did in me, to consider, well, wait a minute, maybe I need to get over to that summit, if for no other reason, to understand my entrepreneurial gifts a little better. Take a look.
Here's 5 ways to think about your mental health as an entrepreneur in 2020 and beyond. So why is mental health so important as an entrepreneur? Well, when we are out there pounding the pavement, building our businesses, especially in an incredibly difficult year, it's hard to take time for yourself and make sure that you're protecting your energy so you can do even better quarter after quarter. So let's get into 5 really wonderful ways to protect your mental health as an entrepreneur. Number 1, remember your why. Why did you start doing this work in the first place? Why did you start this company? And for those of you who work in-house and are entrepreneurs, maybe why are you doing the current role at the company that you're at? Remember your why, remember your purpose. Number 2, seek inspiration from successful pivots. Look at either people, brands, or companies that have been successfully changing their trajectory during 2020 or even 2019, 2018, etc.
Or 2022.
Look towards brands and people who are really good at affecting change with their brands and see how that can apply to your brand. Number 3, develop new self-care routines. This one has been incredibly hard, I think, for most entrepreneurs and work from home folks, because work and life are no longer separate. So making sure that you are, say, taking an hour off from being on camera, being on Zoom, or even taking a break to walk outside, enjoy some fresh air, get some vitamin D, will help with your overall productivity. Number 4, set firm boundaries. So I just talked about how work and life are no longer separate. But when we have healthy boundaries that everyone understands, we have better overall mental health. Number 5, think long term. So I know this is probably the most difficult part to do out of all of the 5 points that I've talked about today. But I don't mean think about your 5-year plan. I mean, think to next month, think to the next 3 months, think to what you're quite literally doing next week. What are the projects that you can prioritize? Who are the people that you can reach out to, etc. Even breaking it down to the next 24-hour cycle can help with some of the mental fatigue. At the end of the day, I hope that these 5 points will help you with.
Okay, so Mark, here's what I love about that, because I believe we should start, if we haven't already, organizing how we will elevate, how we will ascend, how we will grow into what shade of our divine self is next for us, by including, just like we do health plans for physical things and, vacation plans and all these different things. I think we need to integrate, just like like my husband, Brian's a therapist, he has to get continuing education credits to stay licensed. I think as entrepreneurs, we need to challenge ourselves, just like we go to that online thing for social media, to find out what's new and what's working, how to get more clients, all that. I think we should do the same thing to maintain what she just described. What say you? And is there any of that inside of this summit coming up?
Yeah, so I fully agree. And though I didn't do that as an entrepreneur, it was ignorance.
And how'd that work out for you?
Yeah, it didn't work out very well. It was ignorance that led me to not do that. But I'll tell you what, I coach a lot of people. I know you coach a lot of people, and we deal with, not mental health diagnosable things, but clearly things that if they don't get resolved could lead to that on a consistent basis. It's an ongoing thing, and especially an entrepreneur who's building a company, you're going to go through rapid development and changes over time. I mean, it's interesting. If you go from a 10-person company to a 20-person to 100 to 1,000 people, I mean, the dynamics that an entrepreneur has to go through to be able to create that kind of organization, I mean, it's really extraordinarily taxing. And so if an entrepreneur is out there building a company and doesn't have a really good mentor, coach, someone who they can talk to and work with tools to navigate that stuff, they're doing themselves an incredible disservice. That means that they're carrying the brunt of that weight on their shoulders, because the entrepreneur, as you know, sometimes it's lonely in terms of there aren't a whole lot of people that can really understand and comprehend what it is that you're going through, unless they're other entrepreneurs, but within your organization. So it's critical to do that. So yes, to answer your question, at the summit, there's a ton of topics that are going to be very supportive for entrepreneurs. I mean, it's not the complete focus, but we're going to be talking about addiction. There are entrepreneurs that have addiction challenges, not just alcohol and drugs, but it could be chocolate, or it could be work. It could be, any of those things. And Dr. John Rosa is going to be leading a keynote on that. He's phenomenal. So that'll be a terrific one. We're going to be talking about testing and biochemistry. We're going to be talking about sleep with Dr. Bhopal, and there's another doctor with her as well, Dr. Patel. things that you can do, 5 things you can do to sleep better. So just like regular kinds of things. We're also going to, going from the entrepreneur down to the student. We need to really get past the adults and look at what's going on with our kids. Kids are struggling so incredibly much right now. And so that's why actually this year we're offering free access to any school counselor, therapist, or social worker so that they can come and get a broader base of insight about what is available out there that they can bring and support our youth.
Because it changes.
Yeah, it changes. You got to stay on top of it. We're gonna be so it's not just entrepreneurs. We're gonna have we have a whole room about veteran health and mental health.
That's a big one.
And so we're covering a lot of different topics. And if someone wants to pursue a career in this area, there's going to be a whole discussion about what it's like to pursue a career in integrative mental health. And lastly, you mentioned spirituality. We're actually going to have a really powerful panel on spirituality and mental health and how that supports the healing process.
Good. That was one of that piece is new for a lot of summits and workshops and that sort of thing. So I'm glad to see that. But what about this piece? Not to put you on the spot or anything, but I want to know. Sure. Because one of the things I'm always looking for in those things, it's nice to have doctor after doctor after doctor after doctor. But sometimes we need to hear from someone who looks like, sounds like, and has gotten up or couldn't get up to start their day from whatever the reason is, just like we had. In other words, the person who is just a person who has come through something like yourself.
Yep. In fact, I'll be one of the speakers for the spirituality part, along with Dr. Mensa. And so I'm looking forward to that because there's a big component, and it's not religion, right?
No.
But to answer your question, yeah, we have people there that have, gone through it. And keep in mind, quite a number of people who are in this space, even if they have doctor next to their name, if they're in the integrative mental health space, they've probably gone through something that, again, led them into that space. Not all of them, but quite a few of them. So you're talking about people who they've gone through and navigated and discovered, something that, is really helpful to share with other people. And so they made it their profession. But yeah, we have other people there who they're on the other side of, addiction or whatever it might be.
Well, because here's the thing. I feel balance is one of the pieces so many of us leave out. And what I mean by that is, I know when I have my monthly appointment, sometimes twice, with my therapist. Well, I'm not going to spend my time with him, it's my choice, talking about, I've been manifesting this and it hasn't shown up yet. No, but because I'm not trying to mix the peanut butter and the chocolate to get a Reese cup. What I want to do is go there for the things physically, mentally, the real in here, that I need to work on. Say, for instance, getting through some trauma or learning how to forgive, or why do I have these dreams, or why do I, triggers. I had to learn about bad or negative triggers before I realized there are positive triggers in there with me as well. I was missing those. So for those kinds of things, yes. But then I also know that, I can't sit there and daily grounding and meditate my way. I can't. I'm not saying it's not possible for someone else, but I can't meditate my way out of why I cannot stand my sister. You know what I'm saying? Right. I need to go and unpack some things. So there is a difference about what you take in and what you don't. So that's what I find really exciting. So tell people, how does it work? I'm assuming there's a ticket price. Can they buy day by day by day? Do they need to buy the whole 3 days? Is it a la carte, I guess is what I'm asking.
No, it's really inexpensive. We asked for a minimum donation of $25, and you get all 3 days.
What?
Yeah. It's just,
so it's not $750.
Nope. And if someone wants the videos, because there are keynotes, and then there are um, panels, a couple panels each day with 3 options. So you'll choose which one you want to go to. Well, we record all those too. So for $150 minimum donation, you can get the recordings for a full year, and you can share those with family and loved ones, and invite your family and loved ones. If you buy the $25 ticket, even live, and you have it at home, like, invite people to come in and watch. See which ones are of interest. You don't have to sit there for all 3 days if you're not interested in all the topics, but it's a full event for $25.
You can't beat it. And I just want to say this because it begs to be addressed. For those of us out there who are coaches, mentors, whatever, if you deal with other people, you may not think that, well, I'm not dealing with any mental health. We'll see. Anyway, but this is the kind of thing I am going to go to, simply because I work with people. And should something rear its ugly head coming in from one of the people I work with, I might just be able to identify it, understand it, and lead them to some resources that could help. Whereas if I don't go and find out, it's all a part of doing our best, the 4th agreement. So how do you feel about that? Is that something, am I right on that?
I think that's right on. It's why we're, thanks to a grant and some really generous sponsors, we're able to give the free access to the school counselors, therapists, and social workers. But it's that exact thing. It's like, well, and they can of course share it with the communities if they'd like, and they could buy tickets, but the people who are coming, they're the ones that have FaceTime with our kids, whether it's, grade school, high school, college, they have that FaceTime. Well, what tools do they have? Exactly. So just like you in coaching, that's one of the reasons I love it too. I'm coaching people every day, and these tools help. To have awareness that when someone presents something, it's like, oh, did you know?
Did you know?
And introduce them to an exercise, a resource, a concept, and it starts to expand the mind. Even if it's just, I remember the first time when it was a couple years after I had gotten well, and I was at a workshop, and there was a woman there who had been diagnosed with something, and she had 2 young kids, and she was just really at her wit's end, very anxious and overwhelmed with navigating, the diagnosis she was given. And so she told the whole group how she was going to be like that the rest of her life. And so she believed what the doctors told her. And the leader said, well, hey, Mark's gone through that. Mark, do you have any insights? And I said, well, I looked her right in the eye, and I said, what if you're wrong?
Yeah. Mark's kind of freezing up. I wonder if we both are.
And she said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, what if you get better? Oh, did I freeze up?
Yeah, we both did.
Are we back?
Yeah. Let me just.
Did I?
I don't know.
Go ahead.
I would tell people this. One thing for sure, if you missed any of those words, you can pick them up. Don't worry. Those and millions of others will be spewed all over those 3 days. In other words, great content. Get over. Scrolling along the bottom of our screen right now is the actual website where you can go, integratedmentalhealthsummit.org, to find out more, get your ticket, and get yourself some insight. Here it is for those of you like me who really need glasses but are in denial. So I'm going to leave that up there. I've also taken the liberty of dropping it inside the comments. So it's there for your easy use at the conclusion of today's broadcast, which unfortunately is now. I just want to thank you, Mark. You've been a good friend. You live right here in my community. We play tennis almost every weekend. And I just want to thank you, Journey's Dream, Amity, all of the different branches of healing that you have for the world. It's just absolutely incredible. Now, for you all out there, listen, whenever stigma is attached to something, there's a trick to it. There are many things that benefit us that we'll never find out if we don't look for that courage to go in and find out for ourselves. This summit is that opportunity. So I want you to think about that. What in your world must go that is not serving you? What in your world do you need to know more about so you can understand how you can continue to move into that place where you are looking directly into the eyes of your divine self? So there it is on the screen, the 2022 Integrative Mental Health Summit, October 7th through 9th. Follow the link. You won't be sorry. Mark, it's a pleasure as always. I wish we had more time, but we'll get you back afterwards to talk about how it all went. And for you all out there, listen, get out there today. Be the best version of yourself. Be that blessing that you'd like to receive. That's all it takes. Do your best in all you do. I'll meet you, God willing, tomorrow morning, right out there on the front porch, as together we fulfill that wonderful promise that guarantees us wonderful things will happen. That is the 2 or more promise. I'll see you there. Get out there today. Thank you, Mark. Anything you want to say before we go?
I just appreciate you so much. Thanks for doing this and sharing this with your community.
Thank you. And thank you. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Be the blessing. Bye now.
Show me your soul.